So hi everyone, welcome to that episode of Secrets of the Viz. Today I have Raisa to talk about her really interesting IronViz entry on how fruits are grown in Florida, primarily oranges, and how decline over the years because of a disease that's affecting the trees. So tell us a little bit about your Tableau journey and how you've come so far.
Hi, everybody, and thank you, Louis, for inviting me to the podcast. My name is Raisa Hannus, and I'm originally from Finland. Lived in the United States for about 23 years, most of it in Southern Florida. I used to work as a business analyst at the beginning of my career. And then about 4 years ago, I started taking courses on data analytics. One of the courses, I got a little snapshot, like a Tableau in 5 minutes, just showing like, hey, you can drag and drop and it's all cool, and boom, here's a viz. And I was very impressed and I wanted to know more. So I took another course in this Tableau, and somehow through there discovered community challenges. I think there was even a coursework on Makeover Monday, and I've been doing it ever since. And then for IronViz, this is my fourth time entering.
That's awesome. Tell us a little bit on how you arrive on your idea.
Well, I was just brainstorming because I think food, it's a good theme in the sense that there's something for everybody. So you can make it about cooking, or you can make it about origins of food or history or imports and exports. And I've seen many visits in the past from the Viz for Social Good that did a food waste theme one time, and things about supply of food or availability of food globally. So there's a lot of topics that are interesting, but then I thought, what's the first thing that comes to mind when somebody says food? For me, the very first thing that I thought about was what's going to happen to the cost of fruits and vegetables when the US imposes import tariffs on especially Mexico, where you go to a grocery store and you see a lot of tomatoes, of course, and there's even a little commercial about that, avocados from Mexico. So I thought about something related to that. And then another completely different topic that was more like a personal standpoint was what happened to the pineapple plantations in the Florida Keys. Keys used to be all a big pineapple plantation, but there's none left. But then I was like, well, that's a little too simple. They just built houses on top of them. So that's a little short viz. But somehow those two topics stayed in my mind when I started researching data and pulling data sets, and somehow I came up with this idea to combine the importation and the Florida fruit. So that's how it kind of started.
Was it hard to gather the data? Because I know you started from like the production and import and export thing, but your viz actually goes deep into why are orange groves declining. There's probably a lot of research that goes into that to understand what this disease comprises of and how it affects the plantations.
Yeah, it got more and more interesting, but then I was like, also spreading into different directions. So I was like, okay, how do we get back to the story, or what is the story? Because the story could have gone in 10 different ways. So that's why I'm kind of glad that I had this image in my head, like, oh, fresh fruit from Florida, and then slap imported. And then the other one, the little pineapple here sitting on my shoulder, like, oh, what about the pineapple plantations? It's like two voices in my head or whatever. But it really helped me when I started researching, and because I started doing research, you're like, okay, well, looks like fruit production has dropped. Okay, what fruit? Look at it by fruit, and oranges had dropped the most. Why? And where else? I thought California would have been a lot bigger producer besides Florida, and then I found out about this disease. I mean, I personally lived in Florida about as long as this citrus greening disease has been around. I had never heard of it. So, of course, I'm like, oh, I want to know.
That's really interesting because I think one of the quirks of us being in this industry is that we don't settle for an answer. Like we find a question and we dig deeper and deeper. Like it brings us down to like different rabbit holes. And I think that's what I admire about everyone, because we are genuinely curious about a topic, even if it doesn't concern us. It's just interesting to see where the data leads us and what questions can we get answers for.
Yeah, and like looking at the other entries, everybody has a unique story, and it's so cool. You start looking and it's like, oh, okay.
That's interesting. So talk to us a little bit on the design inspiration and how you put together kind of like a retro vibe. It reminds me a lot of your IronViz last year on Margaretaville. because the styling is fairly similar, but this has its own charm. You have the map of Florida on the very first page, which is very eye-catching.
Yeah, I actually came across that map almost a year ago. I don't even remember where I saw it originally, but it was so pretty. I downloaded it and I looked at it just because of the colors. You know, when you're visiting food, you don't want to use a whole lot of blue because blue is scientifically proven to unappetite people. It makes people think of mold and stuff like that. So avoid blue and go with fresh colors. And that's part of the reasons why I went with fruit and not vegetables for it.
Yeah,
Or
I mean, if it's vegetable, your whole vis will be pretty green in
green.
general.
Exactly. Yeah. Red flag.
So there's no doubt in why you chose those colors because it's reflective of it. I really like the thematic thread that you have throughout your vis.
So yeah, the orange, like I did color pick some colors from this map when I finally got the idea that, okay, I can make it about Florida and I really want to use this map, but can I? It probably took me a good half a day to figure out if I can use it. And I was very surprised to find out it's a public domain.
I remember seeing something about Mickey Mouse became public domain, I think last year or year before. And I realized that once the asset is out in the market for like 100 years or something, then it automatically becomes public domain. And this picture that you have was like 1917 or something.
You're right. Good point. 100 years. Yeah, it's a vintage map. But it's so funny when I tried to use ChatGPT and it was not helpful. And then I realized that there's actually a signature on the bottom that I hadn't noticed before. So I Googled the artist name. And finally, I got a pretty straight answer just by using a Google Lens. And then boom, it tells me, okay, it's from this book, public source, copyright free. So I had originally also thought that I would have made this map interactive and put this legend that says, okay, here's oranges, here's lemons, here's grapefruit. I wanted to make it like interactive, but I just didn't have time.
Maybe for a future vis.
Yeah, exactly. But this is kind of where it all started. Well, while I was trying to figure out where this image is from, there was one source that was saying a postcard. So then that's where the idea came for this front page. Here's greetings from Florida, and then that's somebody wrote a card, but it's actually the intro. So you can see this was my very first dashboard that I made, and it's the name of the dashboard is junk. But this pretty much shows the research process. I started looking at FAO stats, the Food Agriculture Organization, and I was like comparing different fruit groups. The green here is production, orange is imports, and everything else is growing. This is just for the United States. But all of a sudden there's fruits and vegetables. Uh-oh, that's the only group where imports are bigger than production. And then I split all the fruit, and again, the biggest sort of change has been oranges. So that's kind of how I got into the oranges. But had a question about the second page, right?
Yeah, so to start off, I love this chart. It's very pretty. It's very eye-catching. Tell us a little bit on how you arrive at this decision to do. I know pie chart is kind of controversial in the community, but I think the way that you've done it is very tasteful because it has the thematic fruit behind it.
So this is my fun chart. This was the one that I was eager and committed to do. And it's like, okay, it's a pie chart, but it is controversial, but let's see if I can make it work. And since there's only two dimensions in each one of them, input share of the total domestic availability of each fruit, and then I put the tooltip as a area chart so that it gives you the whole time frame from 1983 to 2023. And it's not really the purpose to try to compare each fruit in one vis to, but it's more like amount of fruit in general has grown massively in the last 40 years. The only thing is I dropped the banana out of it. This banana is twice bigger than the apple and it's all imported, so it didn't make any sense to put it in there.
The other one that I really like is the fourth page on how you visualize all the different fruit types, the production and segment of it. It showed very clearly on the story that you were trying to tell, like how orange production in Florida has declined over 60%. Tell us how you crafted this page, because this directly links to the page that you talked about, the disease.
This is inspired by a chart that I saw in one of the websites I was researching. I think it was like citrus.org or something like that. But apparently there's several organizations for citrus producers, not only in Florida, but also nationwide, I guess. But anyway, it had this chart that had little reference lines. And I was like, none of these reference lines are 1 year. So I just made them reference bands. And then the underlying data is actually the same data that I used before, like in the previous screen. This one just shows Florida only and shows all citruses, oranges and grapefruit. And that's another fun fact, actually, like surprisingly, there's no lemon product in Florida. All lemons are produced in California today.
Apart from the orange production tanking, were there any other threads of analysis that you did that you found was really interesting about the fruit landscape?
Well, the data doesn't go back that far, but before the 80s, the production had been higher, probably up to 10 million tons prior to where my timeline starts. And that was because of the freezes that we see some here, but there had been bigger freezes, like cold fronts that killed oranges in the 60s and 70s. And that's funny thing, because another topic that I wanted to add, but again, I didn't have time. The orange production actually started in St. Augustine. That's like very north of Florida, which is the first place where the Spaniards landed back in 1500 something. But then because of the freezes coming from the mainland, they killed so many oranges that the farms actually moved south, which again takes a long time, because it could take 10 to 20 years for an orange tree to grow and start making fruit. And then definitely the hurricanes, and that's why you see such a big dip here in 2004 and 5, is because those two were the years with the most hurricanes. Everybody knows about Katrina, but not a lot of people know that it actually passed through Florida before hitting New Orleans.
And it's a compounded effect as well, because you have 4 different hurricanes, and as people are rebuilding the orange groves, like I said, it takes quite a while to rebuild the acres and everything. It's a really tough industry for farmers, especially to deal with all this. And just leading to the final page that you talk about, the steps that Florida has taken to try to go around this problem, because there is no cure for citrus greening. So the only way they can do is modification of the genetic breeding. So you can create like new varietals and having the DNA be resistant to the disease itself. This probably took quite a bit of research, right? Because it's very different from just looking at import and export of fruits.
Yeah, and it was definitely more like qualitative analysis, because I'm like, the more I'm digging, the more information I find. I didn't make this page until 2 days before the deadline, because every time I start it, it's like there's too much information and I don't know how to do it so that I can fit it all in one page. I was like, I need something pretty here. I just used the little orange emojis as bullet points. So that was a very last minute design detail.
Yeah, but I love how you annotate everything, and with the little fruit icons. It's very easy to read, to be honest. So thank you again, Raisa, for walking us through this amazing viz. I've learned a lot about fruits in Florida, particularly on oranges. I never knew about that. And I think that's the marvel of IronViz entries this year. Like you said, there's so many different ways that people have taken the topic, and there's so many things to learn about it. I remember reading one about how salt is being embedded in cultures and religions and food. And I thought that was really interesting as well. I also looked at one that talked about bananas in detail.
I saw that. I was a big fan, because I was so worried about having to drop that banana. I was like, well, somebody made a viz about banana only. It's like, oh, I love it.
So for those who are listening to the podcast, you can first look at Raisa's viz on all of the fruits, and then you can look at Steven's viz on bananas, and you have the whole picture about the fruit production in the world. So I think we have everything we need from your viz. Thank you so much, Raisa, again, for spending time with us to walk through your process and your design inspiration. I hope everyone learned something from this, and we'll see everyone at the next episode. Thank you.